Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 116 of Mythos Busters. I'm Sean and I am so excited! I'm so excited because we're all here. We're all here, guys. It's been months.
It's been a long time.
We had like a super banal like business meeting the other night, and I walked away just going like, "Oh, I'm so glad we were just all in a room together for a virtual moment." But I've got the rest of the Busters with me. Of course, we've got Ian. Hey, Ian.
Hello.
Are you excited for all things Buster?
I am super excited. I wasn't quite sure whether we'd ever all four be on a cast ever again. Life has made me doubt myself. I mean, we keep talking about this. I don't want to beat the dead horse about how busy we've all been, but I feel like we're starting slowly inching towards being back in a place where we can reach our full Buster capacity again.
Yeah, because most of us are about to get snowed in, and luckily that comes with a lot of extra free time for most people.
Snow? So. Oh, what is this thing?
Mm-hmm. I know. The colors, the leaves change colors right now, Ian. It's a whole process. It's called weather. I have to teach each of my Californian friends about it.
Is that thing they invented for TV?
Scott, how are you?
Great after that.
You know the most about weather. Like, Minnesota has it pretty tough, but
we hit very different ends of the temperature scale over the years. Or over the year, I should say.
But can you do it in a week?
Yes.
Because okay, then there you go.
So
yeah.
Canada Day is
Canada
July.
Day I don't mind it.
Canada Day.
Canada Day for short, yeah. It's like Prime Minister instead of Prime Minister. Anyways, when I was like 10 or 11 years old, it's July 1st, right? Middle of the summer. It snowed one day.
Whoa!
And I'm talking we woke up in the morning. It was like a nice summer day. Got really cold around noon, when the sun is high. Snowed for an hour, and then it got warm again, and the snow melted. It was the weirdest Canada Day I've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then of course there's Nick. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Just so stoked on the show right now. This summer, for my part as well. I'm not afraid to admit this summer kind of kicked my ass, and I'm not super sad to see the end of it. So here we are. We got a lot of exciting things going on, including tonight's episode. So we're gonna go through our normal intros. We got some Arkham Knights and BusterCon news, and then tonight's discussion topic is going to be stat building, particularly building around a single stat and all of the benefits and complications therein. And then, of course, we'll round it out with some tentacle time. But before we get to any of that, let's get through a couple of announcements. So as we mentioned on last episode, Iron Man this year, the official Mythos Busters supported Iron Man, is not going to be at Arkham Knights because we couldn't plan for it. And then we announced that, and then the next week Arkham Knights got announced, so called it. So we're moving that to BusterCon, which is going to be our Arkham Con that we're holding at FFC in May of 2022. More info to come on that. But in the meantime, since none of us can actually make it to proper Arkham Knights, Ian, you and I have a bit of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Did you want me to talk about it?
Sure, yeah. Would you?
Football just landed in between the two of you.
Are you guys going to share this thing with others, or is it
just
between you two? Or
We got a
maybe
thing going on.
Yeah, we have a thing together, and then we're gonna stream. So on October 24th, we are going to stream an Iron Man just for two. It's going to be at 12 p.m. Central. Sean and I are going to run through Return to Night of the Zealot, plus a side scenario still to be determined. And we just did, right before we recorded this, a little preview stream of our decks and all that good stuff. That'll definitely be there by the time you're listening to this episode. So go check that out if you want to. Wait, is this going to post after we already do our stream, though?
It actually will, yes.
Well,
boy.
anyway,
So go back and watch that stream.
So
just go-
yeah.
First go
Did
back
you
and
like
watch
it?
that, and then watch the Iron Man stream that has already happened.
It's almost like I've been doing show and release logistics for 5 years and maybe should have learned something from it.
Yeah.
This is the first time I think that we've recorded a week ahead of time, so.
Yeah,
That's
this
fair.
is much different than usual. Anyway, go check it out. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be our first return Iron Man. It's our first 2-player Iron Man. We did try to get the full crew together, but it's not to be. That would be asking too much to have that happen 2 weeks in a row.
So I'm going to ask the burning question on everyone's mind. In a 2-player Iron Man, which one of you is Iron and which one is the man? Yeah. You can think about it.
Okay.
We'll circle back.
Okay.
Either way,
Didn't
though,
land as well as I thought.
I just wish I were witty enough to have yes and it, but I'm not. So that's gonna be fun. Check it out on YouTube, and pay attention for more news on BusterCon. Scott, did we have any new news for BusterCon or anything that we wanted to run over again, or should we refer everyone to 115? Any new developments?
Nothing new. Just want to remind everyone that the hotel block is open. I know a bunch of people have already booked, but yeah, it's and when you book it online using the link I'm popping into the live podcast chat, which is also available, God, a million places.
Should also be in the show notes.
Yeah, you can also just call them and be like, I'm booking for BusterCon, and they'll be like, sweet, sounds good. Basically, it defaults to Thursday to Saturday night, but you can include Wednesday and Sunday night if you want as well at that discounted rate. So I have my hotel booked because it is, like I said, 2 soccer ball kicks away from FFZ, and I'm sticking to that until proven otherwise.
I mean, I'll bring the soccer ball. I want to see this happen.
Ian has to, right? It has to be
I think
Ian.
it's in my contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is now.
I'll just start practicing soccer ball kicks between hotels where I live. Just this.
Just finding some random hotels. Okay, yeah. That seems right on line with everything we do. All right.
I'll post it on TikTok. Get a lot of views. It should be good.
That is what you do nowadays.
Yep.
We had our meeting about BusterCon, so
Yes.
there's stuff brewing.
Yeah.
It is happening, and we're making things, and things are happening. So just because we're not saying anything right now doesn't mean we're just gonna wing it like 2 days before.
No,
So
we promise. Do you believe us?
No. I mean, well.
is this like Carcosa all over again?
Did I
or what's
answer too fast?
No, it just sounded like you said it from off screen, so it was really funny.
I was at the craft services table.
So more news on that to come. So boys, what have you been playing lately? Any Arkham stories to share?
I haven't played since last time we recorded, which is literally just a week ago.
Same.
But I was talking to Nick beforehand. I don't know if I ever told you guys about the campaign I ran with Casey, and we were talking about Bless and Curse and stuff, and he ran Sister Mary, and he had the Holy Spear, and then he also attached Enchant Weapon to it.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
If you have not played that combo yet, my God, that is potent. Like,
Enchanted Holy Spear.
Holy
that sounds like a Dark
moly.
Souls build. I'm into it.
like a lot of times he was swinging at like 12 without committing anything.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Like swinging
With
at
Mary.
swinging at 12. Because what was it? Like Mary's got a 3, and you add. Oh no, it wasn't that. No, okay, it wasn't that much. I think it was 8 or 9. So it was like 3
That's
from
still-
Mary, 4 from Enchant Weapon, plus 1 from the Spear, or 2 from the Spear. So it was like 8 or 9 starting, and then you could like suck in Bless to do more things, commit anything. Using Enchant Weapon adds a damage to it, so like swinging at 8 or 9 for 3 damage before you do any of your funky shit. It's bonkers good. So, I mean, he would look at his hand, and if he had the spear, he'd be like, well, can't mulligan this. You know, like, full build achieved. So
That's a 5 XP weapon or 4?
yes, 5, I think.
I think 5 is correct.
Yeah,
I gotta try that. I haven't gone back to Bless and Curse since it came out, so I gotta try that.
And
Now's the time, baby.
I forget who I was playing. I think I had a survivor because we were doing Bless shenanigans, and I had the Covenant out and stuff like that. But
that spear was so good it caused Scott to forget who he was playing.
yeah,
The only memory he has of that campaign is the spear.
mm-hmm. I mean, it was that good. Like it was bonkers.
Excellent. Ian, have you been playing anything recently?
I similarly have not played since we just recorded recently. I think the only last time I talked about my Parallel Agnes, Parallel Skids decks, the only other kind of campaign that I've really been running through lately is my solo Guardian Tony through Innsmouth, which I'm up to Light in the Fog now, I think. And that's going pretty well overall, although I think it started really strong through the first few scenarios, and then Devil Reef just couldn't get keys because they were all popping up in combinations that I wasn't able to get them, which happens sometimes in that
Devil
scenario.
Reef can be so brutal with that sometimes.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You said solo Guardian Tony, right?
Yep.
That's gotta. I would now assuming because I haven't played Guardian Tony, but I would assume that is the worst version of solo Tony you could do. But it's been going well.
You'd be surprised. Like with Scene of the Crime and Evidence, it gives you some more clue stuff to get, and then Take the Initiative and Vicious Blow, I think, are some of the other ones I have in there. So yeah, it's going like the first, like I got max of everything in the very first scenario. Pit of Despair did pretty well in the Vanishing and in the Barrier scenario. Can't remember the name right now.
In Too Deep.
Yeah, In Too Deep. So I don't think there's anything too crazy with the deck to talk about, except for I did happen to get a certain basic weakness in the deck, which I know this has all happened to all of you at some point because we've all played Arkham for a while. But a lot of times, I'd say most of the time, your basic weakness is just kind of there. But every now and then, you get a certain weakness for an investigator that changes how you play the deck. And in my case, Tony's basic weakness is Dendromorphosis. Yeah.
Extra oof.
Yeah. So
Large-sized oof.
it fundamentally changes how I play that deck, because normally, like, let's say, like, okay, here's an example. I even had a scenario where I started with both Long Colts in hand, if you can believe that. And I did not play them down immediately because I knew Dendromorphosis was a looming threat. And so a lot of how I've played this deck has been usually Switchblade is my main weapon. So, and I'm sticking to that because the nice thing about Switchblade is it's super cheap. So it's one cost. So even if Dendromorphosis, gets rid of it, I can still, get another one out, and it's not that big a deal. So
Yeah.
it just kind of, and Switchblade is also fast, so I don't need to get it out until there's an enemy. So Switchblade, thankfully, makes it a lot less painful than if I was like, let's say, Guardian Mark with big weapons and Metamorphosis. But it's still something that I have to think about, and it kind of affects how I play the first few rounds of a game. I think the another example that I might have that I've had in the past is like if you have a big money build with like Paranoia, for example, things like that. But I don't know.
Or literally any deck and Amnesia.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're playing that one Survivor deck that uses, was it Last Chance?
Oh boy.
As like a key
yeah,
card,
yeah.
maybe?
Does that deck actually exist, or are you
No.
just making that up?
I'm just...
Okay.
In my Nathaniel Cho, Harvey Walters, Nat's basic weakness is your worst nightmare. And it's just because Harvey's like, what the fuck do you want me to do about that? You know, so it's just this race of both of them to get away from that thing. Like,
Such a familiar dynamic, Nick. I don't know the fuck that's about at all.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot. Oh, but the difference is you're set to still kind of deal with it. Because aren't you playing? Who are you playing?
I've got Safina, so yeah,
Safina.
basically, you know, I have 32 cards in my deck, and one of my Spectral Razors is technically yours, so...
It says, do not play until your worst nightmare
basically,
shows up.
I have to
But imagine if instead of Safina, you're playing Harvey. Like, you know, imagine that. It's oh my god, it's a nightmare. Literally.
Speaking of, it's probably... Oh, sorry, Ian. You finish.
I am complete.
Well, then it's probably a good time to mention that Nick and I, despite really vibing on Dark Matter on YouTube and Twitch, I had a couple busy weeks, and then Nick's in a play, so we're just kind of on a little bit of a hiatus, but we are chomping at the bit to get back at that. So if you've not watched any of it yet, and you know you don't care about spoilers, I'd highly recommend it. It's a really cool campaign, and if you're not going to go play it yourself, might as well go watch someone else do it, right? It's really cool, and we really plan to get back to it. So pay attention to Discord when we'll announce about when we're going to get back to it, which should be, I hope, next week, but we'll see.
Soonish, yeah. Ian, what did you get to your third scenario in Dark Matter yet, or no?
Nope, I have not.
Okay, all right.
Sean, we still need to finish our Rick and Morty / Beth and Summer.
Oh my god.
We're on the final scenario for both sides, so
yeah,
we should probably tuck that away because that's been
one ambitious Saturday. We can knock that out.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Anyway, so pay attention for all those. Mythos Busters is coming back alive after this summer that wrecked all of us in our own individual ways. Okay, so moving on from there, we do have a couple of voicemails in the dugout in the bank. I know you guys kind of like indirectly addressed one last episode, and we're going to get to the next one next episode. And then, of course, just always, if you want to leave us a voicemail, a message, we're happy to listen to it and defer it to the next episode and probably make you sad.
Too real.
Well, if we don't call it out, no one will. But we will get to it eventually. So we always enjoy, and thank you everyone who has called in up to this point. That's 203-493-6984, 203-493-MYTH. Call and leave us a message. Ian, what patron news have we?
Alrighty, so first off, as always, thanks to our board members, Chris B, Chris H, Chris M, our conglomeration of Chris's, Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Jesse, Chad, and Robert. Thanks so much for your huge support of the podcast. We do have a special shout out to a random patron this time around, and that goes to Janet Williams. Thanks, Janet, for your support as well, for everything we do. I always give a shout out to mythosmerch.com because it's I'm still amazed we have all this merch there available that has our logo on there and other stuff. So go check that out.
Okay, so I have to tell a quick story, and this is completely
go
self-indulgent, but I have to tell it. So my kiddo, who's 14 and in 9th grade and finally like starting to go out and do things with friends way more often, getting like truly into that social teenager phase, has gone to a couple of hay rides. And she doesn't have a hat that she likes, so I just tossed her my Mythos Busters beanie. And apparently she had a couple friends that were like, "Oh, where'd you get that?" So I'm sitting at home just like cleaning and, you know, being a boring adult. And she's like, "Hey, my friends want to know if you have a merch store."
Oh,
I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And yeah, so it's very endearing to see our logo out there, and I do like to know that it's just a cool logo, even if you have no clue what we are doing.
I thought you were gonna say some of her friends were like, "You listen to Mythos Busters too?" And I would have lost my fucking shit at that, but that's still cool.
Busted into that early teen market, that last market we didn't have.
The tweens are an untapped demographic in LCG podcasts.
Oh my god. Can you even imagine if that was the demographic that was popular with this game? What a different culture it would be. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, I just had to throw that out there.
Fair enough. I would have done the same. So if you have any pictures of you wearing it out in the wilds on a similar note, go ahead and share those with us, because we love seeing that kind of thing, as you can tell. And we do finally have a new job title to give out. And this job title is going to be for Patrick Gingrich. And Patrick is going to have the title of Cryogenic Reanimation Technician.
That's going to be important coming up with Edge of the Earth.
Mm-hmm. When we all freeze.
When we all
I don't know
are
why I
subjected
thought-
to...
Felt like I needed to say that.
I'm sorry, but of all pop culture that looks at what cryogenics looks like, Austin Powers sticks out in my head the strongest. and I know that's stupid, but I can't help it.
One penis pump?
Coming out and having to pee for like 3 years, like, yeah, I feel that.
Here I was about to go on a Demolition Man reference, but
Oh my
maybe
God,
should
you
approach
guys.
with Austin Powers.
You guys.
I was gonna say we might need someone to unthaw a cop to go hunting after a convict who has also been thawed out recently.
And feel free to send us any movie references if you guys know of any movies that accurately portray what cryogenics might look like.
I think Futurama got it right.
Yep, exactly.
All I can think of now is one hardcover copy of My Penis Pump and Me by Austin Powers, signed by Austin Powers.
This sort of thing is my bag, baby. God, I watched that movie way too much.
Oh.
All right. Anyway, welcome, Patrick. I hope your board chair is oh so comfy.
And slightly cool.
Now we're gonna have to play Austin Powers CCG at BusterCon.
Okay.
Please no.
Since you
Oh,
reacted
Scott.
that way, now we really have to, Scott.
I mean, if we're doing dead CCGs on Sunday, I mean, you never know. That's not
Scott,
confirmed. Don't.
The
make
whole
plans based
goal
on
of the
that.
game is to shag your opponent before they shag you. So
Yep.
That
I
is
think it's
just...
right up your alley.
That's
Oh my
literally.
God.
The
How does that
case.
work?
One of
Don't
your
answer.
primary stats is mojo.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never played a game of it, but I remember looking at
Remember
the
looking at
cards
the... I know.
when it was out, and just like, even as a serious nerdy fan of Austin Powers, I remember looking at that and just going, what are they actually doing?
I feel like that's another level even beyond Dead CCG.
For real. All right. Anyway, so we've got a little bit of news on the article side. Nick, you're a news guy now, right?
Oh, yeah. I was in the middle of looking up Austin Powers cards. Yeah, okay. So, someone else
An
get those
ultra
posted
rare
in
Basil
chat
exposition.
now. Okay.
AustinPowersDB.com.
Oh, make it so.
The
Okay.
DB stands for Dirty Baby.
Oh, God. All right. Can we just be an Austin Powers podcast now? Can we?
I mean, I think we are. That transition has
Basically.
happened.
Yeah.
Mojo
Okay.
Busters. Here we go.
Oh,
So as a
God.
reminder, our Arkham Nights is happening. It's happening Friday, October 22nd through Sunday, October 31st at the Game Center in Roseville, or FFZ, as we so affectionately call it. So if you're in the area, check that out. Again, as Sean mentioned earlier, there won't be any official Mythos Busters representation there, but we will be doing that stream on Sunday. Sean and Ian will be, so look forward to that. And then there's also there's events going on. They have a different event every day. There's like a recipe event and stuff like that. So it sounds like it's a little different than it has been in prior years, but probably still worth checking out.
And also, just I want to throw out there, I know we mentioned it last time when we talked about Arkham Knights, but if anyone attends an Arkham Knights that is actually thrown by another game store, we want to hear about that, because that's actually kind of a cool expansion. So if anyone takes any pictures, tag us. If anyone's got any play reports or just thoughts they want to throw out, feel free to hop into the voicemail or send us a Gmail. I think it'd be really interesting to see what it looks like, that if any game stores were nimble enough to react to the amount of notice they got and throw on an Arkham Knights. We'd like to hear about it.
Also throw out there, just because of when this episode is going to be released, Arkham Knights will have already happened. But on the
Well,
Thursday,
surely someone will have taken pictures and can still send them to us.
But the reason I bring it up is on Thursday. So if you're listening to this episode like the day it comes out, this coming Thursday of this week, there is a stream with MJ, and she is going through a whirlwind tour of the Edge of the Earth campaign expansion, with a focus on the characters and scenarios that can be found within. So Thursday, very important stream. Blah, blah,
That sounds like a super fun stream that I will not show up for. I can't with the spoilers.
Oh, okay.
Do
That's
we
just me, though.
do we know what time they usually stream in the afternoon, right? Like 1?
Yeah, they normally start at 1.
Yeah. There is a Tuesday night stream as well with trivia where chat will be answering. And that's 6 p.m. Mythos Busters time, which is also Central time. So
Convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also we have a new article called Seeking Truths. Meet Daisy Walker.
Who?
And this was yeah, I know, this brand new investigator. Exciting stuff. Written by James Phillips. So yeah, I mean, just
Who has written for us before? Lest ye all forget. It's been a while since we've accepted articles, so I don't blame anyone for forgetting. But that's
like it was
James.
posted on our site. Gotcha.
yeah.
It's been a long time since I've looked at the articles on our site. But it's an in-depth look at Daisy, her strengths, her weaknesses, and then possible upgrades for her as well. So,
In addition, there's probably 4 new alt arts that you can print out attached to the article because clearly we needed more.
There's not, is there?
Well,
No?
those alt arts are actually in the revised core.
Yes, that's what it is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't see any. Oh my god. But there's also a novella coming out, or is it out now, or a novel? Hang on. The Devourer Below, edited by Charlotte Llewellyn Wells. Aconite Books. I should read these articles before I talk about them on the show, but I assume they're...
No, this is just Mythos Busters React content. These
Right?
are raw
The
reactions.
cover to Devourer Below looks pretty sick.
It's rad.
Yeah.
It's
Collection
really
of
rad.
short stories, Eric says. Thank you, Eric, for having done my work for me. Yes, okay, so a new collection of short stories coming from Aconite Books. Yeah.
Eric,
That's
I
it.
want to let you know that we do still owe you a set of Swarm cards. And we haven't forgotten. I'm just really inept. So, just to let you know. Prize fulfillment is not our strongest suit. But it is still there. All right. Excellent. Scott, any rules PSAs?
No.
Fantastic.
Nothing
Why don't
really
you
new has changed.
Why don't you lead us into our discussion topic tonight? Because I know it's the thing you've been wanting to talk about for a good long while.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a topic that was has been bouncing around in my head for a very long time, and
we were talking about doing it as an AV Club episode back when we were doing those.
Ooh, there's a callback.
yeah,
Ooh, that
way
hurts.
back then. And so one thing that kind of brought it to the forefront of my mind, I'm not sure where in the timeline it is, but Brian David Sandberg, if you haven't heard of him, he's the funniest guy in Arkham. He has the rightofseeking.com blog, and it's basically most of his stuff is satire. So if you've seen any looks like articles like The Onion, but it's written about Arkham, that's his
so
work.
good.
Oh man, there are some really funny ones. Like the article where all these people are complaining about, revealing the sexuality of some investigator, and this is when Calvin came out, and there's some people who were angry that, they mentioned his husband on the back. And so he goes to this article just complaining that, I can't believe with Mark they printed Sophie, so we know he's hetero. It's just like, anyway, stuff like that. Hilarious. Once in a while, though, he does post very serious articles. And I have to say, Brian finds these things, like he wrote an article about Sun Warrior Yorick. We streamed with that deck, or I tried to. And he's got these awesome deck building skills. So, all that to lead to, he released an article called Stats Ball. And if you've ever watched the movie Moneyball, which is my favorite sports movie, It's basically about a baseball team where they just go off one or two stats and they end up getting really far, and it's a real story and all that stuff. But they don't base it on the normal stats that you do make a baseball team. So Brian's point is in playing a stat ball deck is you design a deck to raise at least 2 of your investigator stats to be able to reliably pass skill tests of difficulty 3 with no commits. And so he posits that it should be at least 5 to qualify, but you usually want the stat to be around 6 or 7. I've played decks like this now, looking at it from a stats ball perspective, and I think there's a lot of people who have done this before without necessarily thinking I need to build a stat ball deck, but you're just like, I'm going to take these 2 stats and leverage them hardcore, and that's basically the idea. So what we're talking about today is, can you do this with 1 stat, like the whole eggs all in one basket? How viable is that?
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys found yourselves playing decks along the lines of stats ball, where you take 1 or 2 stats and just put everything?
Anytime
I
play
mean, Mystic, yeah.
Yeah, I play a lot of Mystic, so yeah. What's interesting to me, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, is that one of the hardest things is really figuring out your rig and also having enough space to play the cards. And I think that's what always makes me diversify a little bit more, even if I was originally heading in that direction. But yes.
This question we have written down, but I'm not even sure if I know how to answer this correctly. Do you think there's a best player count for the single stat? And to be clear, we're not talking stats ball, because if you want to talk stats ball, go read Brian's article, writerseeking.com, just search stat ball. The single skill, if you're just going to pile everything into one column, is there a player count that works best?
I would imagine, because I was the one that wrote that question down. So the answer I had in my head when I wrote that down is that the higher the player count, the better. Just because, as we'll determine, or as we'll see as we go through this a little more in depth, not all stats are created equal in their ability to manage everything the game throws at you.
Agility!
No, that's a very interesting
we'll loop
way
around
to go.
That, Sean.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get a rise out of Ian. I
have
troll
thoughts.
Ian.
No, so for instance, if you wanted to make a deck that uses all combat, you're going to find that there are significant elements of the game that you're going to have a much harder time with, and so having 1 or 2 more investigators that can still kind of pick up that slack, I think you'll see more success there. So my assumption was the more player counts, the better. But again, obviously, solo mystics exist, and they're pretty good. So,
I think maybe I don't know if it counters your point or just adds color to it. I think the more players you add, the better it gets. But you could potentially do it in 2-player. The problem in 2-player with kind of a specialization of stats is sometimes the game requires you to kind of be in a lot of places really quickly, or to address things really quickly. And even in 2-player, if you've got dedicated clover or fighter, or even if you're breaking it down to stats, like I'm focusing on combat, I'm focusing on intellect, it can get dicey from time to time, but it is possible.
Yeah, I kind of think about it as, it's not exactly the same, but in the Lord of the Rings LCG days, there was a lot of debate always about monosphere decks, which was can you get everything you need to do if you only include cards from one sphere in that game? There's not a totally clean comparison between spheres in that game and stats in this game, but it's somewhat similar, where you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and trying to see whether you can get everything done, and kind of just ride with whatever weaknesses come with that. I think we're at a place in the card pool where you can kind of get there with most stats, but again, it's just going to depend on a lot of the things you guys have already talked about, and player count and all those considerations.
I think there's one stat in particular that we'll get to where it's kind of well, this is not, I think, viable solo. But anyways. So with the idea of bundling everything into one stat, where do you guys want that stat? Like, I want it usually, if I'm playing solo at least, I want to start with a 5 in that stat.
Yes.
And usually get to a 7 by first or second turn. Like, I want it there. What's your guys' take on where you want that stat?
I think that's a healthy place to be. 5.
I think if you can get to 6 in the early game, that's pretty safe. It's going to be scenario dependent. You know, that skull often scales as the scenario goes on, which is going to affect your odds. But I feel like getting, as Brian said, 3 up on a basic skill test, which is going to be 3 difficulty.
Yep.
That's a pretty safe place to be from a probability perspective without having to expend any more resources.
Mm-hmm.
This is assuming standard difficulty, of course, because once you get to hard and especially expert, then you're looking at you need that 5 base, and you probably want to get to 8 as quick as possible.
Yeah, and I think this is doable as well. Even like Sean, you mentioned, like 6 is okay. So maybe, I mean, depending on which investigator you're using, maybe a 4 is okay, but you're able to get to a 6 or a 7 really quick, and a 4 is an okay start. I probably wouldn't try to do this with like a 3 in whatever stat it is, because I think that's an uphill battle, even though it's one digit less than 4, but that's 1 digit less than 5. So
right, and every one skill point you can add and not have to touch again just completely changes the probability of the chaos bag.
Right.
So I guess to clarify, are we talking about structuring your deck in such a way that you can pretty easily get to 6, or are we talking about straight up building your deck so you have passive abilities that just put you at 6 before you do anything else to the test?
Yes.
I mean, the idea behind at least the stat ball deck is like your base, like let's say for willpower, because that'll be the first one we're doing, like your base willpower, taking a willpower test is like a 7.
Without committing
anything,
using tap actions or anything like that. It's just
yeah. So like I don't know, like as far as intellect goes, if I would count magnifying glass, because it's only during investigating, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not which I mean, if you're going all intellect, you're probably investigating a bunch. I mean, I would assume, but for all the other cards that use intellect, it's not necessarily intellect boost.
Right, and the purpose of this discussion is to determine which skills are going to be able to do every element of the game, and intellect and magnifying glass can still only do the base of what intellect is used for. So
yeah, I mean, like some of the treacheries in Path to Carcosa look at that and are like, haha, this won't help you here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's still a very good card. It just for this specific conversation, so let's jump into the most difficult conversation. Willpower. Does anyone only use willpower? It seems crazy. I mean,
who would do that?
Who's so crazy? That being said, will is the only stat of the 4 that doesn't have a basic action tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? Like you can't evade, fight, or investigate. Like it's you need something else to turn that willpower into something else, like investigating or fighting. It offers you good protection, but you need something to convert it. That being said, I think will, if you're playing Mystics and you're going will, is one of the easiest ones to get to obscene levels of a stat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like if you have access to purple cards and decent starting will, your options drastically improve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have allies that buff will, they have accessories that buff will, they have, obviously everyone has tarots, but you're looking at multiple slots that just say, hey, get +1 will, just for having this in play.
We've got a bunch of really cool events that, like, you don't even have to have really good will on its own, but, Spectral Razor and the Evade one and Read the Signs.
Ethereal form.
If you've got, like, 4 willpower, smashing those together with your normal stat, generally, from a starting position, is a really good test.
Right, yeah.
What's your loadout, usually, with, like, what does your deck look like? What's your ideal rig, maybe, when you're going full on willpower? Like, I'm usually one clue arcane slot and 1 fighty arcane slot.
I think that's just Mystics in general, especially low player count.
Yeah, it depends. If you're playing like a Gloria or a Marie or maybe even a Jacqueline, someone who has passable intellect, you can sometimes offload a slot and just investigate like a normal investigator. But you kind of have to deliberately push yourself in that direction to do it.
If you're going all in on will, because there are mystics who use willpower to do stuff, but you're not quite trying to go all out on your willpower stat. You're getting things accomplished in other ways, maybe through like committing and other approaches. But yeah, generally if I'm going where I really want to boost up that will super quickly, then I'm probably going to look at an ally who gives me a passive will boost, like Mr. Renfield, probably an accessory. So just really leveraging those different slots that give you a passive will boost quickly.
And I think to that end, mystics in particular get interesting because out of that one stat, willpower, you can do a lot of things. I don't know that you can really say that about any of the other stats if you're trying to take them to 6 or 7. So, Nick, maybe more to your point, if you start taking this idea into higher player counts, that dumping everything into will could go flexy, or it could go really hard in one direction, and you're still just looking at will. So your loadout, you wanted something to do damage with. Maybe you want something to investigate with. It really just depends on the situation, and I think that's what makes mystics so interesting, and particularly building into will so interesting.
Do mystics have enough choices of passive will boosts, like assets that sit in play and boost your will, to have a discussion around when to include which one? Because I'm trying to think of allies, and the only one I can come up with at level 0 is Renfield. I don't know if there's
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's Holy Rosary, but is there any other accessory at level 0?
The key.
There's the Crystal Dangler.
Oh, okay. So
And
those two
and
at least.
St. Hubert's Key.
St. Hubert's Key. That's it. Yeah.
Ah,
It's called
yep,
the
yep,
key.
yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's an expensive one though. Whew.
It is, and it drops your sanity. Like it drops your sanity, but it gives you that heal when it goes away, which is nice. I've used St. Hubert's Key a lot, but honestly, I tend to use it in off-class mystics more than I use it in full mystics.
Though honestly, if we're talking about this kind of maybe in the context of a stats ball deck, St. Hubert's Key is a very good and very efficient card.
Yeah.
To put into like a Gloria or a Norman or a Daisy, because just within that one card you get a lot of relevant stat boosts for the faction.
What other will boosts are there? I mean, there's obviously the tarot.
Yeah, you can start looking at off classes. Like, I mean, once you get to level
That's
2,
what I
like,
was...
what's his
Yeah,
name?
there's Granny Orne.
Agnes's boyfriend.
Peter
Yeah,
Sylvester.
Pete Sylvester. But again, that's still all ally slots. So unless you're running charisma, you're already competing against yourself. So the one thing that jumped to mind for me was Dark Horse. Does Mystic have enough tools to get a big pool of resources quickly so that running a Dark Horse Mystic deck wouldn't necessarily be that much of a, that much of a hindrance? Because Mystic does tend to need resources in my experience. So
I think once you get your rig out, though, right? Like, especially if you have the, is it not Rite of Seeking, but Mind's Eye? Right, for clues. Like, you set it and forget it. Now you're investigating good for the rest of the game.
Or Sixth Sense.
Well, and I also think
don't use charges.
I mean, you can get a quick kit set up, but I also think that part of the thing with Dark Horse is if you can burst your economy when you need it, but otherwise run at 0, that's also really good. And Mystic does have some pretty good burst economy. Like, Uncage the Soul is a fantastic Dark Horse complement. And I think Voice of Ra, depending on what else you're playing, could be pretty good. Sacrifice is super low XP, Sacrifice. But very, very good and versatile card.
Nick, when I said Mind's Eye, I was thinking Sixth Sense.
Okay, and I couldn't remember what Mind's Eye did, so I just agreed with you.
That's the one where you can. Well, I mean,
I never use it, but sure.
Mind's Eye is a good one to chat about because I've basically done an all eggs in one basket Patrice on Willpower, and you use Mind's Eye because you're going to draw the extra copies every so often and add more charges to Mind's Eye, and basically you can, anytime you want, replace a test with Willpower, which is exactly what an idea like this is going for, right? Like this type of build where it's like, I'm going all in on Willpower, and then the game tries to make you do something else, and you're like, no, that agility test is now Willpower. Screw you, treachery.
Holy cow, yeah, that's really good.
Oh, man. What a civilized world where Doom Awaits would have been.
Yeah.
Big Kahuna in chat brings up Spirit Athame basically works as a will boost, but that only works for spells, if I remember right. Is that correct?
Correct.
You exhaust it to get +2 to a spell test. So yes, it's like Stats Ball Light if you're doing Spirit Athame.
Yeah.
I think most of the times you care about will is going to be during a spell skill test, except for, of course, like Mythos stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Well, unless you're doing Scott's Mind's Eye play and you're using will as often as possible,
True.
well, and I think maybe we glossed over this a little bit at the beginning, but I think one of the main complications when you're looking at any kind of like really going hard on a specific stat, particularly in lower player counts, though sometimes it can matter even in 4-player, is that the game sometimes just requires that you hit an important test of a specific stat honestly, and like it's its own action on a location, a la Where Doom Awaits, or it's in a treachery that you really, really, really don't want to get hit by, and sometimes the game will just put you in a vice, and it just says if you can't hit this skill honestly, you're just gonna get hit. So I think that's honestly probably one of the bigger considerations for moving toward this kind of deck building. Is the campaign you're looking at, how many of those punches are coming and how you're going to deal with them.
And I think it's beneficial to look at the campaign too. Like, if you're going into TFA, be aware that you're going to need to evade stuff and use agility for things. Like, what's the buried in or something where you can't disengage from enemies, and it's you attach it. It's where the girl's trying to climb out of the hole. That treachery, and you have to test 4 agility, and if you fail, now it's a 3 agility. If you fail, it's 2 agility.
Yeah. If you are doing any other stat other than will and you play TCU, you're probably gonna have a hard time because you're gonna have a lot of those witch hexes stacking up, and you're like, these are all will tests.
Yeah.
But I'm focusing on intellect. Like, yay,
But I mean, that's where you look at the campaign and you'd be like, well, I'm going all in on, like, let's say intellect, but I have survivor access. Well, I can take ace of no. The remove something from your threat area.
Alter Fate.
Thank you. It has a tarot card on it. That's why I am
So-
terrible.
I
with
like
card
Ace
names.
of No instead as
Ace of No.
I'm gonna pay you an ace to fuck off.
So let's move on from will, because I think will is the.
Oh, do we have?
It's just so like that's literally what the skill is based on, is to be the substitute.
Okay. Well, one last question then before we
Sure.
move on. We've been talking a lot about Mystics, and rightfully so. But outside of Mystics, do you guys see any tools that you'd like to call attention to, or any value in funneling to will?
No.
No, it really is only other classes that happen to also use Mystic cards. Like Patrice.
you would have to have off-class Mystic of some kind, pretty much.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I will add to, like, one of the things or at least we wanted to discuss with each stat is how they get clues, how do they deal with monsters, everything like that. But I mean, that's pretty obvious with Mystic, right? Like, that's what their cards do.
You just play one of the will things that gets clues.
Yeah. Okay, super quick though with Mystic. Do you ever find it's worth expanding your arcane slots? Because I'm always tempted, but like with sign magic and stuff.
I think now we have way more interesting options to do so than we ever have before. Between, I guess, primarily in Return to TCU, because upgraded sign magic is amazing.
Yes.
It's really, really good. And then as well, the new tarot, the level 3 tarot, which I now can't remember, is pretty good. Just throwing that down to get an additional arcane slot, 2 additional arcane slots if your accessory slot is not bespoke, can be pretty solid.
Is there a build where the familiar is a good bet? Like, what mystic would look at the ally slot and go, I wish that was another spell? Like, that, the familiar is the only one that stands out to me, like, why would you take that? Whereas, sign magic, like, hand slots, mystics don't need those, that sort of thing, so...
Yeah, if David Renfield was not so good, I'd have an easier time with it because
Renfield, Olive. There's mystic
Initiate...
allies give you so much utility that I don't know if it's worth it to scrap that for an arcade. It feels like a downgrade.
There is a card that's been spoiled for Edge of the Earth that I would maybe consider.
Has been spoiled or
isn't
revealed?
there something that looks at the number of arcane slots you have?
The number of arcane slots that are full.
Oh.
Yes.
Full. Okay,
well, then sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went once through most of the previews that were out in the community at the time and have since forgotten about 90% of it, so...
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Intellect. I think next...
i.e. the win stat.
I mean, next to Willpower, I think it is probably the one... Oh, I don't know.
Agility can give it a run for its money.
Yeah,
like,
that's a thing.
Agility and Intellect kind of go neck and neck in second place, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that's because Agility and Willpower, going back to that, have the least, like, progressional use at their most basic, so like they have to build in these other ways to augment it, I think.
Well, I mean, yes, Will does, because that's literally what that skill is designed. Like, that skill is designed to be the substitute skill. Agility has a use, but it doesn't get you direct progression.
Right.
So yeah, I guess I agree with you.
It pushes your problems down the road.
I'll ignore that. I'll look at that later.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think we've always kind of referred to Agility and Willpower as the defensive stats.
Right.
Versus, if you have high intellect and or high combat, you've got a distinct purpose that you can just do that keeps the game rolling for you. So yeah, it makes sense that there's more substitute stuff with the other two.
Some of the notable investigators with 5 intellect, we got Daisy, Harvey, Mandy, and Norman.
Wow, that yellow bias though.
I've done stats ball with Daisy with intellect and willpower before, and willpower just as its off class thing, but with intellect being the major one. And I mean, Harvey and Norman are built for a stat ball deck.
Yes.
Like with 4s and 5s all ready to start. Like you need 3 boosts total, but yeah. So big question, how do you get clues? I mean, this is the dumbest question ever.
What
use
intellect?
The action and pull a token from the bag and get clues.
And I mean, all those 5 intellects, I mean, they have access to yellow cards, and yellow cards can accelerate clues, and cool story, bro. Okay, so this has been something I think way in the beginning Seekers had a little bit of trouble with, or at least if you're going intellect, was dealing with enemies. But now, I mean, there is a plethora of options.
I mean, even in the core set, we had 2 cards that were Seeker that were pretty good with... I mean, Mind Over Matter, that still gets used, I would say. Pretty decently. In level 0, like, if you just are like, I need something until I get a more direct answer, Mind Over Matter is nice because it's fast, it lasts your whole turn, it's versatile, you can use it for either. Disc of Insomnia is an intellect, obviously, but it's in the intellect class, so they had access to that. And we got I've Got a Plan. That was Dunwich, wasn't it? That was pretty early.
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer.
Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, anything that's come out, like, I put Occult Invocation in the show notes because there's that as well, which is great. That does use intellect, and it's based on cards discarded, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Go ahead.
No, I said my piece. You go.
Yeah, I think the problem with the seeker enemy management in the early days that I saw is, although those options did exist, they were all kind of temporary as opposed to other classes
Right.
that actually got an asset that you can just reuse. So the problem was because there were so few options, like let's say I've got a plan came over, so you'd have I've got a plan in mind over matter. But if you're talking about like being able to deal with monsters consistently over the course of a whole scenario and campaign, that's where seekers had trouble. But then now, because there's so many more options, well, you can load up your deck with a few of those different options, so you'll always have at least one. And then, of course, the other kind of old reliable for a long time that did give you an asset that you can reuse was Strange Solution, the acidic ichor,
Right.
which was that Dunwich, I think?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, every campaign I think we've gotten a side quest seeker card, and they've all upgraded into like the enemy one, the clue one, the utility one.
You mean they've all upgraded into the one we all play and the rest of them?
Right, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the unfortunate truth of it.
Except for maybe the diary. I feel like the diary actually has... You could make arguments for each version of those.
Yeah.
Sure.
They might not be great arguments.
You
but
could,
make
Sean.
I think you can. I mean, like,
Yeah.
with the diary, I just take the...
Madman.
Yeah.
Well, Madman, but also I take the card where you can upgrade one and then randomly... Like,
Oh,
you
I
choose
take
at
that all
random.
the time anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure
like, I mean, you might as
analysis.
well. But with the diary, I'm like, you know what? Like, you're just getting a 2 boost. You're getting an unexpected
Yeah.
courage every single turn. And once in a while, it turns into a 4 boost, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I really don't care. I just want
And
2
if-
upgraded diaries. Like, it's... Yeah.
And that...
Well,
oh,
Ian,
yeah.
I'm glad everyone is of the same mind as you. We just talked about this on the stream because Ian's doing Diary and Amanda.
Yeah. Shrewd
Oh,
Analysis,
nice.
that's the card.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Big Kahuna.
Yeah.
And Big Kahuna
So-
does also mention that you just, it's an FFG game, so you just play yellow cards and you'll win.
And then win.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
So, is there anything else that Seekers have that's leveled up to really deal with enemies other than those side quest assets and
Got a plan.
upgraded I've got a plan, which I have on there. I
Not to
couldn't...
interrupt, but it just occurs to me that Lord of the Rings is the only FFG LCG where that does not. That's not the case because the yellow faction in Lord of the Rings is the Baggins faction.
Yeah, this is great.
Very specifically, the
But-
little mini faction they added for the Hobbit saga Bilbo stuff.
I mean,
Who was fun when you built around him, but
I do remember
Oh,
someone
dead.
saying, though, that is actually not a sphere. So, it doesn't count.
maybe once or twice.
Yeah. Actually, the Star Wars LCG also, yellow was a good splash, but it, like as a main, it was only good as main for a very short time.
I remember when, like...
When the box dropped, right?
Yeah, yellow
Yeah.
was the first one that got like a hard ban or
Yeah.
whatever.
There were
And I
some-
was like, I remember reading the card and going, "Why the fuck would they do this?" Like, oh,
Like if you got the right objective flop and the right cards in your hand, first turn win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it is true. Play yellow and you win. Yeah, I mean Alice Luxley, but like I mean she's not basing it on intellect. She's just basing it on getting clues and dealing damage.
Right.
too.
Also, she's Guardian.
Yeah,
but
I
she
mean-
does an intellect boost. I take it back.
yeah.
Yes.
She does boost intellect though. So yeah.
I said I take it back.
And I mean I don't think like man, I mean I guess we have to basically leave intellect to mainly seekers, but
Well, okay, so then the question is, and I think we've already talked about it a bit, but of the non-seekers, who are the investigators where you might look to actually, if not maximize, at least like work on their intellect to be workable?
Norman.
Is it just Gloria and Marie?
probably do Carolyn.
Carolyn, sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
Carolyn.
She's got enough seeker access that like you can grab I've got a plan, mind over matter, and whatever else you need to like boost her intellect. I think that's about it.
All right,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah. And Marie, yeah, for sure.
Jeff says Bob.
Oh yeah, he's 4,
yeah, I
isn't
mean,
He's 4.
The Edge of the Earth investigators haven't really entered my consciousness yet. But
Yeah.
that seems sage.
He is Survivor with
Rogue.
Rogue?
Yeah,
Rogues?
Survivor Rogue.
Yeah.
But 4-starting Intellect.
Yeah, that's such a weird. What a weird specific combination. What a weird terroir of an investigator.
I believe
Ooh,
he's
good
the
word.
first. He's the first survivor to have 4 intellect.
I think you're right. I think I just looked at
That
it.
is
when I wrote
correct.
the show notes.
Yeah.
That's
Entering
correct.
into the DB. Yep. Bob Jenkins. That's it. So there you go. We're finally getting our piece of the pie.
You've come a long way, baby.
So overall, intellect I think is pretty manageable if you want to go all in, not stat ball, but just like full on int build.
You have tools to do it.
Yeah.
I think is like there's enough that you can make a deck and it's going to be viable. It's going to be fairly consistent, even on the places like with enemy management. I think. So.
Yeah. And you're probably playing Seeker, which means you can also,
Right.
like for some enemy management, it doesn't necessarily have to use your stat, but you can play, oh my goodness, that one that Sean likes and he just stepped away. It's a single card, and when you play it, the 3 Myriad comes in, and you can
Oh, the book of what? Oh,
draw cards.
Occult Lexicon.
Occult Lexicon, thank you.
Yeah, there's
And
that
Big Luna, thank
one,
you.
and like we said before, Disc of Insomnia.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. And now that has a level 0 version as well, so you don't have to upgrade out of something else.
yeah. All right, time for combat.
On to the worst one of the 4 to do this with.
This one, like, I mean, I had in my mind that there was more cards than Interrogate,
There's not.
but apparently it's just Interrogate.
It's just that's the only one that's strictly like. There's other tools to get clues that also rely on enemies, but the only one that's test, combat, get clue is Interrogate.
Yeah.
And that's a little frustrating, but
So for 5 combat, we got Daniela, she's new, Mark, Nathaniel, and Tony.
2 non-guardians,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so clues. If you're basing it off of combat, Interrogate, that's it. Unless enemies show up.
Yeah, right.
And then you have a bunch of options. Right? But, like, I mean, evidence itself doesn't get a clue unless there's an enemy. Unless the game gives you an enemy. Right?
Well, the key is that evidence doesn't use combat.
Right.
Like, the easiest way to get evidence to fire is with combat, but it itself is not test, combat, get clue.
Exactly. Same thing with, like, I put down here, just be Roland. Roland himself, again, like, he will trigger once you kill an enemy, probably with combat, but alone, his combat skill does not get clues. Same thing with Gret Wagner. You know, you can kill that enemy, get a clue, but there has to be an enemy.
Yeah.
Handcuffs, scene of the crime. Handcuffs to bring someone around and use scene of the crime is my idea. And maybe also interrogate them, right? Like,
Yeah. And Jeff brings up in chat, interrogate also requires an enemy. So even the one card we mentioned, you still need that enemy to get it to fire.
Yeah. And I was like grasping at straws here. I'm like, what is combat but also can get clues? Like Gravedigger's shovel? Because like it's a weapon that you can throw away once you're done beating the shit out of things and get a clue. But like,
yeah. And also there's nothing that exists for any of the other stats, I don't think, other than Will, that's like spend a charge to replace any test with, you know, X skill, with combat, with intellect or whatever. So you can't really use combat to even fight the encounter deck when you're drawing cards off of that. So you really have to rely on those other tricks and tools that just kind of do it for you rather than testing your 7 combat.
Big Kahuna mentions Bauta, which is
a
reward from Carnival.
It's not even amazing. Like, it's good, but it's not like it's a one-time use.
That's one test handled. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with this one compared to all the others is it's like you can't use combat to get clues. You can it's basically the presence of enemies is basically.
I'm sorry. Have you guys never played
clues.
Interrogation?
Yeah, but you need an enemy.
You need an enemy,
okay,
yeah.
Fine. That's yeah. All right.
And it's one card out of the whole pool that says test combat, get clues.
So I think if you're going into a single skill and you are choosing combat, be aware that you need to get clues every other way except for using your combat.
It is interesting as we kind of talk through this, and I'm sure I'm really slow to the take here, but it seems like from a design perspective, they have to keep a lock on extra cluing, whether that be clue acceleration, investigation test substitution. Like, that is the place where they have to be the most careful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the closest that we have to hard progress is gathering clues, so they don't want that to go. Oh, they already were, playing around with that, and it got a little out of hand, and that's why Rex is on the taboo list. But I don't see anything wrong with Rex. But so, yeah, it's best to check themselves before they wreck the game.
And of course, our other question: how do you deal with monsters or enemies? I mean, you're all in on combat. I assume you'll have a weapon.
You got that.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that the cluing class gets a bunch of ways to utilize that intellect to get clues, but the combat class...
You mean to deal with enemies?
Sorry. They get a bunch of stuff that's... You have to have an enemy around. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see... It doesn't feel balanced to me.
I think the bigger question isn't, can I beat this enemy's fight value? I think the bigger question is, can I accelerate damage so it doesn't take me 3, 4, 5 actions? Mm-hmm. And that's... So even though, Seeker, Intellect, skill investigators have tools to use Intellect to deal damage, they have far fewer tools to deal additional damage than what the combat investigators have access to. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many times we've talked about it before. Like, give me, I have a weapon that gives me +1, +2 combat, but no damage boost. Like, where's the damage boost? You know what I mean? Like, that's the gravy. That's what I need. Is the damage.
Because the clues don't sit around and smack you at the end of the turn if you fail to get them all.
Also that.
Yeah. There is Haunted, though, which is kind of like that.
For one campaign. But
yeah. I don't know though, Nick. Looking at our list. So mind over matter, yeah, absolutely. That's an emergency card. That's just I need to punch rats or I need to evade something, right? Get out of the way. Mm-hmm. But I've got a plan. Can scale up to 4. Occult invocation can scale up to 3.
Yeah, I think you get +2.
You can discard 2 cards and you get +1 damage for each of them.
The acidic ichor does 3.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, but these are events. And these are assets you have to work at to get to.
Right.
Whereas Guardian, literally right out the gate, 45 automatic
and machete. Yeah.
Level 0 right there. You know what I mean?
And I think that kind of gets back to my point of, they have to guard clue acceleration and hard progress a little bit harder than, you can blow this enemy away, but what good is that actually doing you in the overall progress of the game?
Right.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter unless blowing that enemy away then allows you to progress.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also, even though there are no cards that there's only one card that is test combat get clue, I still am reticent to complain about Guardian's access to clue acquisition, because especially after Nathaniel Cho came out, they have a lot of options.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. I think what I'm personally, I hate to say criticizing, but what I'm criticizing is pouring all your eggs into combat and trying to get clues with combat. Right. But, if you're pouring all your eggs in one basket for combat, unless you're Tony, you're probably using a lot of Guardian cards, and Guardian has a lot of ways to get clues. It's just not specifically using combat, but my god, it's so close that maybe I count it, right? Evidence is there, Greet Wagner.
Greta.
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, scene of the crime.
Scene of the crime, yeah.
Yeah, it's there, right? And then every Guardian who I'm thinking of, has besides Nathaniel, but has a bit of a splash that can use something, or they have a 3 intellect and you can put a flashlight in there and,
Right.
Just kind of make it work.
Yeah. Moving on to the dump stat, agility.
Already talked about willpower.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. All right, we finally got Ian to fire us.
Oh man. agility 5. We got Winnie, got Monterey Jack, for now on known as Cheese, and Rita.
Wow.
Rita has 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
She was our first 5, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Correct.
So I think, and Ian, I'm going to give you the floor right away here. I think agility is the most interesting way to load up on one stat and try to do everything. Opinions.
Interesting is a very squishy term.
I like the word interesting. It's not as negative as I might expect.
Entertaining, let's say.
Yes. Well, agility, which is usually seen as the home of rogues, and rogues aim to entertain. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that started out pretty rough. Like, if you're trying to do everything with agility in the core set, you're going to have a bad time. Although the revised core set did add lockpicks, as we talked about last time. Which is a big get.
So big.
Yeah.
So big.
I would say I think it still needs some pieces here and there, but overall, I think agility's in a pretty good place to both get clues and deal with monsters. Although, I think entertain is a good word because it's a little bit different than willpower and mystics, which is just a straight substitute. Like, you use willpower to do X. Like, usually either you're adding your agility to another stat to do something, which is fine. Like, that's just as good or even better. Or similar to what we talked about with combat, you're kind of using either like evading to do something, or maybe not directly using the agility stat, but kind of the neighbor of the agility stat.
So, getting into clues, I mean, so level 0, like, okay, let's work backwards. Let's do leveled up first, because lockpicks exist.
Right.
And I feel like that was a real turning point for agility-based decks.
That was Carcosa, wasn't it? Or was that Dunwich?
No, it was...
I believe
that?
Carcosa is correct.
I thought it was actually later. Oh, yeah, Path to Carcosa. Yeah, like, lockpicks level 1, adding your agility, which is going to be a 4 or a 5, or if you're building a single-statted deck, is going to be like an 8, probably. Because I also find, like, rogues have a really... or rogues in general, but agility is also really easy to boost.
Yes.
To obscene levels. It seems like they haven't pulled their punches with designing cards that add agility to you.
Well, and as we're talking about pulling into one stat, and sorry, Ian, if I'm stealing any of your thunder here, I think rogues have a particular interest in it because of how many abilities they have that reward you for hitting big tests in big ways. So to come out of the gate with a huge base stat in Rogue can reap some pretty, like, it can kind of give you a cascade of benefits that are ancillary to the test you're actually doing.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, like, taking this approach of just totally dumping everything into one stat really plays into what rogues want to do in general. If you are taking advantage of things like quick thinking and watch this and all these kind of succeed by a certain amount cards.
So, clues at level 0, we now have level 0 lockpicks. We got Pilfer, Breaking Entering, Belly of the Beast, Followed. Followed takes a little build up, but... You know. Oh, wait, no. Followed is still intellect based.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. I had Followed and Eavesdrop both on there, and I see you took Eavesdrop off, and I was like, what? Is that int? And it was. So, shows how often I play either of those cards.
Well, again, the game kind of has an interest in not flooding us with abilities to get clues with, off stats.
I mean, 4 for agility is pretty good. And one of them's an asset.
Yeah.
So,
I think Rita, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ian, but I think Rita might be one of the more difficult ones to do with this because she doesn't have access to lockpicks. And so she's basing it on Pilfer, Breaking Ending, Belly the Beast.
But she also has access to the survivor tools. So specifically for agility, yes, you're right. But she has access to other tricks to get clues, just like a Guardian would. So.
Yeah. She's not using her agility to finagle clues out of there.
Yeah, in terms of getting clues, this list is like there's kind of like a tier 1 list, which is like lockpicks, and then the second tier, which is all these other cards. That's kind of how I think about it. I mean, because lockpicks is reusable. Obviously, in level 0, you have a chance of breaking it right away. But lockpicks, the upgraded, I never usually end up breaking them. But yeah, it's pretty much a game of getting lockpicks out and then going to town. The other cards, yeah, you can use, and I have used, but it's just hard looking beyond lockpicks. So I guess there is the thing that you're a little bit one-dimensional in those terms. Like, you really need to get to those lockpicks quickly. And if not, then you might have some trouble.
Right.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to disentangle in my mind, like, this agility approach in rogues, because I mean, there is Rita, but beyond Rita, like the straight up rogues, then I start just thinking about this whole approach of paying money to get clues, which is not what we're talking about. But it's just hard, and similarly to Guardian and like how they get clues through like killing stuff, which is not quite using their combat. Rogue kind of has getting clues through paying money, which is not the same as using their agility, but it's kind of hard to separate those two in my mind because they just usually go together in actual practice of building decks.
I was gonna say also because like what non-rogues have high enough agility to capitalize on tools like this, and I think of like Ursula, but she doesn't have access to rogue cards, so like you know.
And why would she use rogue cards to get
right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, Wendy. Big Kahuna brings up of course Wendy,
but she's got rogue access
to rogues. Yeah.
So she's gonna grab those lockpicks, right? Like, yeah, it's.
I think kind of this is maybe a little bit out there for what we're talking about, but I feel like we're kind of in the realm of describing why Streetwise got the taboo, right? Because we're talking more about static boosts to hit these big tests or focus on one or two big skills, but within the faction identity of Rogue, that's kind of what Streetwise did, is for a mere 2 resources, which, if you're running acceleration and doing something with Rogue to get you money, which, you should be doing, 2 resources isn't that big an ask. Suddenly you can have these huge hops in these 2 stats that, when combined, particularly in solo, end up being very, very effective.
Well, and also to add to that, like, when we're talking about, using agility as that one big stat, which is the whole conversation, and we're saying, well, just use lockpicks. I mean, the thing is, though, that's the same as saying just use Sixth Sense for mystics, right? Like, agility itself doesn't get clues. You need something to convert that agility into clues. And lockpicks does that, and well. But, Ian, like you said, like if you don't get lockpicks, you might be hurting for a while. Depending on the investigator.
I think just the big difference compared to Sixth Sense and Mystic is, just that there's not as many. It's almost like how Mystic used to be before. It had more, like, they've gotten more and more spell options to substitute will to do investigator. But in the before times, in the old times,
pre-Dunwich,
then it was like, like I better find that spell that can do that one spell that can do that in my deck, and if I don't, I'm gonna be have a bad time. Whereas now, when you're building Mystic decks, at least how I usually do it is building a few different options for doing that. So if you don't find one, you can find another, but we're not quite at that place with lockpicks in the agility approach. Like, if you don't find agility, if you don't find lockpicks, then you might struggle. Right. So you might look at including other options to get clues, but
one thing I like about the investigators we have listed here who could, like, easily hint into, like, really leaning into agility, Rita maybe has a little bit of a hard time, but both Monterey Jack and Winnie, just by their virtue, can stretch into intellect pretty easily. So if you're going hard agility with one of these investigators, it's not too hard of a flex to just, in Winnie, include enough intellect icons that you can keep the engine rolling and hit an intellect test. Or in Monterey, you just be Monterey, I think. I don't know. I haven't played him yet.
Also,
He has some access to Seeker, isn't he?
I believe he levels into Seeker, yeah. Also, we haven't really talked about him, but from scenario 6 of a campaign on, Calvin could fit into any of these.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked. So like
For exactly 2 turns.
so, Rogue or Agility rather has 4 pretty good level 0 options, and then it has lockpicks. You know, when you level up, so it has a lot of level 0 options for clues, and not a lot for clues once you level up. Now let's look at combat, or damage rather. How do you deal with monsters with agility? And that's like the opposite. That's like the inverted version, where you got backstab at level 0, and that's really it, isn't it? Is there anything else that uses agility to specifically deal damage?
Waylay, I guess, kind of.
That's after you evade an enemy.
Well, right, but we're still talking about
Yeah.
agility.
Sure.
Like, I would consider Waylay and Sneak Attack, like, an exhausted enemy. Like, it's so close to agility,
Sure.
you almost... If we're having that conversation, you almost have to include it.
Yeah.
But you're right, the backstab is the only one that's like,
Do damage.
test agility to deal out damage.
Right. And I was going to say, whereas, well, when you level up, there's a bunch, but there really isn't. It's upgraded backstab and ornate bow. And everything else is, again, that after you do something that's usually agility related, get a bonus.
Yeah.
So.
Like an upgrade Sneak Attack or Delilah, kind of.
Right. Although...
Pay money to...
You could count like Slip Away and Cheap Shot as agility focused enemy management. I love both of those cards. I use especially Cheap Shot. I use Cheap Shot a lot.
Yeah.
I love it. So
I love Slip Away. Like
Slip
the
Away is
double
so
tap.
good.
Yeah.
And upgraded. Well, they both upgrade to if you fail, return it to hand, right?
If you succeed by 3, return it to hand.
Succeed by 3. Okay, yeah. No, but the level 0s are awesome. And then you have on here, any of those events with Big Daddy Chuck. Like, well, I mean, any events with Chuck. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Just Chuck, really. I mean, for being honest.
Yeah. So Ornate Bow is fantastic. I see 2 main issues with it. One, you have to reload
Action
it.
intensive.
It is, yeah. But I mean, you're dealing out 3. So that's going to take care of most, like 75-80% of enemies in the game, probably, right?
Just run Hatchet Man for those ones where it doesn't.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
It's basically like Vicious Blow, but with more steps. And the
Eek Barba Durkle.
and Ornate Bow also takes up 2 hand slots, so if you're holding on to your lockpicks, oof.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's the only, like, and I'm not saying Ornate Bow is a bad card, because it's a very good card. I love that card.
Yes.
But if you're...
We know, like, right now in your mind's eye, you're imagining Skids with a bandolier, like a shoulder-mounted bow, and a regular bow in his hands.
Yeah.
I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing is, when we're thinking about how you deal with monsters with agility, I think focusing too much on, like, what instances where you can use agility to attack monsters is almost focusing on the wrong thing, because agility, if you're going an agility approach, probably you're going to use evade as just a basic evade action as your main form for dealing with, let's say, like 60 to 70% of monsters. And so your attack options are really targeting in on the ones that you need to deal with because they have Hunter, or because they're sticking at your location and you need to stick around there for a while. So I feel better about agility's ability to deal with monsters than I do with clues. Not to say the clues isn't in a good place, because again, lockpicks. But I think agility is just like, because you can just use it to do a basic action of the game to deal with monsters, to evade them, that it's in a pretty good spot overall. And usually, again, because this is just kind of a big chunk of campaigns I've run throughout the life of the game, like solo evade heavy investigators that you're using evade as your main approach with dealing with monsters, it's usually pretty effective overall. You do need to have some options, though, of dealing with enemies, and a lot of times, though, It is ornate bow, of course. You can use ornate bow, but a lot of times it is using the weapons that don't necessarily use agility. So I think where there is a place in the game is adding some more weapons that just straight up use agility to kill enemies.
What a different world this would be if... Do you think there was ever a version of the game where ranged weapons specifically used agility and everything else used combat?
I mean, maybe. I
I know it's a little on the side of speculative, but...
Circle back to something that Scott brought up about ornate bow with it being two-handed. So are two-handed weapon? I never thought about this, but I realized that I don't, for the most part, pick up two-handed weapons when I'm playing rogue, and I didn't even think about because of the lock, almost like a lockpick tax. You know what I mean? Are two-handed weapons more of a problem in rogue than they are? I mean, Guardian. Guardian has ways to deal with that, I guess.
I think it depends on what you're doing, though, because Rogue also has a lot of really good one-handed weapons. Or
that's true.
Or accessory slotted weapons. Right? Like
they have one really good accessory slotted weapon. Yeah, you're right.
And so, like, every time I play a combat rogue, aka Tony, like, it's just switchblade after tiny gun after tiny gun after switchblade after garrote, and it's just like, like we said when Tony came out or shortly after, like, Guardians are good at doing one big test, boom, 5 damage or 6 damage or something big, but Rogues will do 6 damage with like 2 fast attacks and a normal attack, so over 3 tests, right? Like, I know the Chicago typewriter's there, but like, man, I just,
that one's rough.
I'd rather just take the upgraded single-handed guard.
If the extra actions got you extra damage, then it would be worth it. But the fact that the extra actions only give you a stat boost, like, there's so much easier and overall cheaper ways to get yourself a stat boost. I think the only other two-handed weapon that's worth looking at in Rogue would be the Beretta.
Yeah. The only time I ever got the typewriter to work to a point where I liked it was Skids doing everything he can to get extra actions. Like, I had every card that was take an extra action or whatever in that deck. And even then I was like, I don't need the typewriter. Give me something else. Like this, I don't need it. With all these actions, I can do anything.
That reminds me, I still have to build that like borrowed time Skids deck. And
it's fun.
Does it work?
Borrowed time and is that the click one? No, what's the...
borrowed time.
That is the click one. Okay, yeah. No, it's fun. It's really fun.
The red... No. What's the other one?
There's 2 parts to this, and I can't remember what the other one is. Maybe it's just Skids. Maybe he's part 2.
Well, this links in a little bit to the Preston deck I've been playing recently. Preston is possibly my favorite rogue.
Wow.
Winnie's up there too. I don't know. I like the weird ones. Like, aside from Mystics, I like all the Mystics. But in the other classes, I like the investigators that just don't play like the other investigators. So I really like some Preston. And one of the Preston builds that I've really fallen in love with is the idea of the Preston that is kind of poor Preston, doesn't amass a lot of resources, so is using things like Fire Axe and modern day...
Dark Horse Preston?
Not Dark Horse. I mean, you could, but I don't. But, Fire Axe and Compass. And then the other point of the deck is to gain as many actions as possible to have these big turns. And in those big turns, you either play Trial by Fire to get your stat at something and then just go ham on it. Or, once I've got enough XP, I'd run 2 Red Gloved Mans in Preston. So you have these turns where you've got Leo down as your normal ally. You throw Red Gloved Man down. You choose... either intellect and combat if you're going to try to like really progress things, or you're choosing like will and combat if you just need to kill a bunch of things. And you take 4 actions and then play ace in the hole and take another 2. And you're just trying to pull as much value out of those red gloved man / will to serve. God, no, I keep getting it wrong. Trial by fire turns. It ends up being really interesting. And for a turn, you get to be a stats ball deck.
And
it's pretty fun.
Is Red Glove Man, you discard him at the end of the Mythos phase?
End of Mythos. Yep.
Yes.
So he sticks around.
He's
got
the best
dude,
version of that.
So if
I
you
want to
had...
do an episode of the AV Club on the Red Gloved Man because I feel like he is undervalued and there's so much more use to him than immediately meets the eye.
So if you played the Gold Pocket Watch and skipped the Mythos phase, you would get him for 2 investigator phases.
All right, well, there's my next upgrade.
Okay. Good talk.
Good
I don't know if Pocket Watch is it illicit?
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. I don't think it's illicit. I think
No.
it's exceptional.
Well, it is exceptional,
Oh,
yes.
no, wait. Gold Pocket
It's
Watch?
relic.
Yeah,
Item relic, right? Yeah.
Ooh.
Nailed
Okay.
it.
So agility.
Anyway, but getting to that point where with rogue stuff and with money in particular, you can make some crazy things happen.
So I actually threw this little topic in at the end. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but is resources the 5th stat that we need to talk about all in one basket?
I mean, it is for 2 investigators.
Like Jenny
Really
and
just
Preston,
one
right?
investigator, but another one can also happen to use a lot of those things too.
I would argue that if you build Carolyn in a certain way, she can amass ridiculous amounts of resources.
Yeah, but can she use those to...
No, so much.
Yeah. That's the thing, is turning resources into the thing that fuels all of your success. But yes, I love rich Uncle Penny, Auntie Pennybags Carolyn. I love that sort of setup.
So using I mean, I almost feel bad because like every time I build a smog hoarding money build, it's either Jenny or Preston. Because I feel like those are the only 2 can do. But the decks look like 22 cards identical.
Oh yeah, because it's
Right? Like-
it's just the suite of cards that came in TCU plus a few extras. Like that's literally it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
So-
I mean that's not like disgraceful or anything. There's
No,
a certain
it's
number
just-
of cards in Rogue that want you to have a lot of resources that you're sitting on.
I'm not saying it's disgraceful. I'm just saying it's almost like the willpower conversation. It's like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's like Money Talks, 2 copies of all the favors, Intel Reports, Small Favor, Decoy,
Well connected.
High Roller. Yeah. I even throw Cunning in there because I'm going to have a buttload of resources.
Oh, yeah.
And so +3 Intellect or +3 Agility on a test. Lola Santiago, I mean, just buy clues. Literally turn money into clues. Like there's, yeah.
Well, and I think Lola and Delilah both lean into that, like, I'm getting 2 stats to high levels type build, particularly for Rogue, and what the decks that might include them are doing.
Right.
Now, I did hear saw an interesting conversation. It was on our Discord at one point, where people were discussing the money stat, or the idea of, obviously smog builds, tons of talking about it, and arguing between Jenny and Preston, and is it High Roller, where you pay 3 resources and exhaust it and you get +2?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the Well Connected is exhaust it and you get +1 for every
5.
Based on, how
Right.
much you have.
So with Well Connected, yes, Preston starts out with a boatload of resources. But is Jenny the better one because she starts at all 3s instead of all 1s? So for Well Connected, to get Preston to Jenny's level, you need 10 resources.
And is that one that's exhaust to trigger it, right?
Well, yes, correct. I think that both of the big money decks take it. I think.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
He's saying which is better.
Right, and I'm saying Preston sits on Well Connected and doesn't care about High Roller because he gets to sitting on the bigger pile faster than Jenny does. And High Roller means more to Jenny even if you have nothing else going on. Like, even if your stack has gotten eaten away at and you only have the, 3 resources to spend on High Roller?
Yeah, 3.
Right?
Yep.
That means more to her, +2, even if it clears your resource pool, than it would to Preston. I think Preston's better for Well Connected. He just gets there faster, and like once per turn, you have a stat, whatever stat you want.
I tend to fall on the Jenny side of this, but I'm hesitant because I feel like my disdain for Preston has been established already, and so I don't like playing as Preston. Yeah, he's my least favorite rogue. Yeah, I just don't like it.
We should.
So
I also don't like it, but that's just because I couldn't get him out of the freaking house.
yeah, which is not to say he's a bad investigator. It just doesn't quite play into how I like playing my rogues. And Jenny kind of fits into that more.
Well, also, base Preston, yeah, he can get to it quicker, but then, well connected, just for one test, you're now Jenny's base.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's-
you're
that's my
probably
thing.
hitting a 5 or a 6 on well connected once you actually get it set up. But
That's a lot
I'm
of
just-
actions, though, to pull that money off of inheritance every turn, though.
it is.
Like,
It is.
I
Yeah.
don't think we can negate that, right? Like, that's an action-intensive setup for well connected.
I
Right.
fully agree. I think personally, in the Preston decks that I have had success with, like Leo is your ally because
Right.
the ability to have that extra space, because you can play Leo turn 1 like pretty much any time.
Right.
Yes.
With Preston's income, and the ability to have that extra action to play with, pulling in the inheritance when you need it, doing things on the turns where you need to do things, where you're actually spending things, and the rubber's meeting the road. I feel like Leo is Preston's ally, level 0, 100% of the time.
Does anyone care about Dario?
I wish I did.
I used him, but I can't remember in what. I think did I use him in a Preston deck? I think I can't remember now.
I mean, it's got to be a money deck because I don't think he's good anywhere else.
because he's
Yeah.
when you get 10 resources, you get what +1 int
And will.
Yeah.
and will. I mean, that's pretty good boot. I mean, the will you could take or leave as a rogue generally.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a good Preston card because if you're going to use Dario's action to gain 2 resources, it
Right.
goes on the inheritance, which means you have to use another
Yeah.
action to claim it, and like the economy on that is terrible because actions are the most important thing.
Yeah. Is there?
Psychopath.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say Psychopath in chat says he's running him and Bob, and he's doing work. So, I haven't played Bob yet, so
I can
guess
see that.
Yeah, but yeah, totally. I can see that.
I just had a thought. So Dario in Jenny, is there a way to do like a battle mage Jenny? Because she also has Dunwich Splash. Could we give her
possibly.
will up to a place where you're slinging spells as Jenny?
Well, does Lola Santiago give
Agility
will?
and int.
All right,
Yeah.
And Delilah is combat and...
Will.
No, I want to say she's agility as well. Ian?
Oh yeah, combat and agility.
Yeah, it's agility.
Delilah, yeah.
They're not going to give you any will and rogue.
No, they're not, are they? No. So then you run. Then you run. What's his name? Renfield.
There you go.
Ooh.
Renfield and Jenny. Like, okay, all right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna tech this. I'm gonna build this.
You might have proposed the first Jenny build that has like crooked my eyebrow since fucking Carcosa.
She's so
Yeah.
fun. Like, I really like Jenny in general, but now I'm super excited to build this.
Well,
Well, send me that deck list because I'm happy to be a part of it in whatever way I can be.
okay, so money as a big stat, I think it's doable. You can kind of do some enemy management with agility and some Delilah and small favorites, stuff like that. You can
The only
Definitely
other
get
one
clues.
I'm going to throw in here is Dexter. Hear me out, because if you manage to upgrade alchemical transmutation, or even using the basic one can be pretty okay. But alchemical transmutation in Dexter to like gain fast money and then scoot it out for the thing you care about, you can end on a big old pile. And the fact that he also has access to Well Connected and High Roller and those sorts of things, like, you don't look past Dexter as a potential third big money investigator because he's got tools.
I haven't played Dexter yet. Does he?
Real good.
His thing is he can play an asset fast, right? Is that his thing?
yeah.
He kicks out an asset in play, plays an asset for fast at -1 cost.
Okay. I'm getting into some magic territory here, but there isn't, I mean, fitting for Dexter, I guess, but there isn't a window to where you say, I'm going to use Dexter's ability to return this asset to hand and play this asset. But before that happens, I'm going to sacrifice the asset I'm returning to hand.
No.
Like, oh, okay, damn it.
Because sacrifice is an action.
Yeah.
Oh,
because
you're
your
right,
Cost
you're
isn't
right.
paid.
Yeah.
So is there any way that like you would do that? You would return an asset to hand to play one, and then sack the one you just played.
No. Oh, well, sack the one you just played, maybe. Like you fast play out like a 0 or 1 cost asset. I forget what
Switchblade.
There's
Switchblade. There you go, Switchblade. Yeah. So
Yep,
you put
Switchblade's
Switchblade
fast
out.
by itself.
Yeah, you put Switchblade out, and then you pop Switchblade back into your hand to play, I don't know, Familiar. And then you sack the Familiar and pop the Switchblade back into play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what that
you can
gained
do.
you, but it was fun. You moved
Some
a lot of
money and a
cardboard around.
Switchblade?
Yeah.
I think I think Switchblade's really good in Dexter because regardless of what you're going to play next, if you throw Switchblade in for fast,
Yeah.
you're essentially getting the thing you're playing for fast.
Right.
Yeah. Which can like if it's a shriveling or something, you weren't able to play it fast, so you might take an attack of opportunity. Switchblade lets you negate that attack.
Get
of
back
opportunity.
at, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Or give you a third fight action where normally you'd only have had two.
Right.
Yeah.
Dexter's really good. He's really good. But anyway, my point
Okay.
being like don't look over him for
Sure.
like being able to accumulate large amounts of money because
I
he
could
can.
see that.
Yeah,
I can see
agreed. I
He has
usually
the
end up with a
tools
ton
for
of
it.
resources when I'm playing Dexter.
So closing off the discussion, as far as not stat ball, although I encourage everyone to try stat ball decks because I've had nothing but success with them.
The theory behind them is solid.
Yeah. With the single stat builds, is there any, like, I mean, besides combat, is there any one that you're like, no, I'm not going to do that? Or what's everyone's, like, go-to one? I would say besides willpower, because I feel like willpower just answers this question immediately, because it's how it's been since the core set.
I think agility, honestly, for me.
Yeah.
After will, it's probably agility.
I'm torn between will and intellect. Or sorry,
You
agility, agility and
Okay.
intellect. Pardon me.
Don't answer will, but is there any...
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking will, but you guys can't answer will.
Sorry.
I probably
Yeah.
don't need to give my answer, but agility.
Yeah.
Like, int is close, but the fact that there's those... Again, we talked about them, the suite of skills that just add agility to your other stat. Like, that's so useful.
Events,
and
but
that's... Yeah, right, yeah. And that plays into the high agility. So I think agility is the next one on the list. Also, I tend to have more fun playing rogues than seekers. So
Well, I think too, like Ian, like you mentioned, the whole rogue thing, which is where you're going to find a lot of these agility things, they're all about that big bombastic test, and that's really fun, right? Like just going hog wild, burning through your deck in 5 turns is Winnie, just doing everything on the board that needs being done, and then stepping on a rake at some point. Like that is just rogue, and it's exciting. And so I
mean,
think,
ollieing off the rail,
yeah,
doing a kickflip into the rake.
yeah.
If that meme is to be believed, it's
I
so
love
good.
that meme.
Yeah, that's agility to me. That's rogue, and I love that playstyle because it honestly it makes some of the best stories.
Yeah, I will say I'm intrigued a little bit by the intellect kind of enemy management approach that I know it was a past episode we were kind of throwing out, like making a seeker deck that just deals damage, a seeker killer deck, but that's not cheating by using off-class cards, and I'm still intrigued by that idea.
Has to be only seeker, so you gotta do Harvey.
Yeah,
You're
you
not
also have
tempted.
to. You also have to have upgraded. I've got a plan. Somehow.
Harvey Killiams.
Okay.
All right. Well,
I thought you guys would find that funnier than you did.
with that wet fart, let's move into tentacle time. Sean, what's been grabbing you lately?
Oh boy, real life mostly. But beyond that, I did finally get around to I beat Miles Morales Spider-Man. So that's what I'm going to talk about because Spider-Man, the PS4 Spider-Man is very, very good. And if you haven't played it yet and you have the ability, why haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's at least top 3 superhero games. And for me, it's my favorite. Miles Morales took that and was like, hey, let's make it a little faster, give you different abilities. Like, you don't have as many gadgets like Peter Parker does, but you've got like invisibility and bioelectric stuff as Miles does, and the way that plays into that game's combat system makes it super interesting and fairly different to play from the original. And then throw on top of that like a solid 60 frames per second on a 4K TV, because we're living in the PS5 era. And oh boy, that one kept me going for a good long while. Very, very good game. I also got way more invested in Miles Morales as a character than I ever did, despite really, really, really liking Into the Spider-Verse.
You mean despite really liking the best Spider-Man movie that will ever be made?
It's up there. It's like Spider-Verse and Homecoming are my top 2.
Those Spider-Man games are the only things that are tempting me to buy a PS5. Because I've been an Xbox guy since Xbox came out. And that's where like all my games are, all my friends are, everything. Like I'm so in the ecosystem.
Not all your friends.
That's not true, though.
Well,
yeah. You got 3 of us at least here.
Okay. Well, 2.
But the nice thing about buying a PS5...
Oh, no!
The nice thing about buying a PS5 is you're essentially also buying a PS4.
Yeah, right.
Like, in this generation, Sony actually bothered to care about backward compatibility, and so far, at least in my experience, has really delivered on it.
Spider-Man has been my favorite superhero from when I was like a wee toddler. Like, I've always liked Spider-Man, and those games look just amazing,
so
right? And, like, oh my goodness, that and The Last of Us is the other PlayStation thing, which the HBO series is filming in downtown Edmonton, and
really?
I was walking like around
in the background.
No, because there's tons of police when they're filming. But I certainly did like scope it out and I was going around the barriers and like it looks sweet.
I wanna see in the background of a shot just Scott wearing his Mythos Busters hat with his phone out, just like.
Well, they're using what the American equivalent of a state legislature is. As part of the backdrop too, like, and it like so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's like a Capitol building.
Yeah, and it looks very similar actually to your Capitol building, but like, and that is all decked out in like post-apocalyptic like vines and flipped over cars. Like, it looks so weird from what it's usually like nice and manicured and like like it's
stately.
I want to say that I know I've said it before, but going back to Spider-Man, Spider-Man on the PS4 is the first video game in a long time that I 100%ed it. I did everything. DLC, all of it. Got everything in the game, and I was actually, like, physically depressed that I did not have more Spider-Man to play. Like, it was so weird.
There are so many ways to do the open world, but I feel like that game got it so right for what you want to do with Spider-Man. Like, the traversal and the web slinging is an absolute joy to engage with. And the Spider-Man story and characters that they introduced are super solid.
It was so good.
And like better than what the majority of the movies have done with the character. And then
I'm not going to spoil anything about the story, but like one of the big things about Spider-Man games is like boss fights are so swingy, like they're either really good or they're terrible.
Swingy. I see what you did there.
Well, sure, yeah. But in PS4 Spider-Man, it's like, yeah, okay, like they knew like fighting the Rhino is really lame most of the time. So let's have them fight Rhino and Scorpion together. And it's like, holy, like that does it. Like just do 2 bosses and suddenly it's really like intense. So that was awesome.
I'm not spoiling much because this is the opening sequence of Miles Morales, but the next time you fight Rhino is particularly spiced up as well.
Nice.
And it makes it a very entertaining fight.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, so Spider-Man, that's been great. I also got almost all the way through Dark Souls 1 finally with the friend I'm playing through it with. We had another weekend. We played through. We're in the main game. The only boss we've yet to get to is Gwyn. And in we just started the DLC, and the last thing we did was Artorias, and oh man, that is exactly the kind of fight I love the Souls series for. That was so fun.
Then I
And
can't
despite
wait
the
for you to
fact-
get to 2.
To 2, yeah, I'm excited for it. Because now that I have a PS5, we can hop from 2 straight into Demon Souls, and be ready for Elden Ring when it comes out in January somehow. But anyway, yeah, Dark Souls, very, very fun. I don't know if we mentioned it recently, but it's fun. That's me.
Ian.
There hasn't been a ton new for me because we just recorded so recently, but I did think one of the things I haven't mentioned is I have been continuing to read through. Speaking of, we talked a little bit about the Aconite Arkham Horror books recently. I have continued to read through that series. I am on Mask of Silver, which is the 3rd Arkham Horror book that they came out with, I think. I read through Wrath of Enkai and Last Ritual. And then there's a few more after that, Litany of Dreams, and then the Devour Below collection. I'm not done with Mask of Silver yet, but I think it might be my favorite one so far. And I'll say in general, in terms of just story, I would recommend the Aconite books over the novellas. Like, the novellas had some fun stuff. But
Including promos.
Yes. Yeah. They were nice sleeves for the cards that came with them. They did have some fun stuff in there, but they often, because they are novellas and so short, they like the stories would often, I found, like wrap up super quick and just be like, oh, okay, I guess they wrapped up the plot. But these are full novel length, so they can really let the story breathe and build some interesting stuff. And so all of them have been really interesting so far. I like Mask of Silver, which is kind of focused the story around like a troupe of, I guess essentially like a film production crew cast from Hollywood, obviously, who make like horror pictures. This is 1920s like silent era, but then they go to Arkham to make their new horror picture, and it's has a lot of good elements to it and characters. I definitely recommend reading this one. Bikun and then the chat is asking which investigators pop up in the Aconite books. I'm kind of uncertain whether I should spoil that, because I know some people might enjoy, like, because a lot of times it's not really telegraphed until it comes up in the books, and then all of a sudden, because the other thing I should say, if people aren't familiar, is all of these books, unlike the novellas, don't focus on existing Arkham Horror investigators that we have in the game, or Arkham Horror Files. They're brand new characters, like Mask of Silver focuses in on a character. She is Chinese American, I believe, and she makes costumes for the pictures. That's kind of the focus. And her half sister is one of the main actors, but she has to hide her ancestry because everyone's super racist. And so she wouldn't get to be a leading actress if they knew they were related. So anyway, that's just kind of a taste of how these are new characters that were created. And I'm really curious if any of these will actually show up in the card game later. And I hope some of them do, because they tend to be interesting characters. So these all focus...
We are running out of pre-established characters, aren't we?
Yeah, so it seems like this would be a good place to tap some new characters. I don't know all the details on like how that would work, but I'm sure like they could easily enough grab those characters and use them. But so the Arkham Horror Files characters do show up. Each book that I've read, I think at least has had 2 of like main characters that you would know show up in some capacity, and sometimes some like side characters. But usually they're not obviously the main focus of the story. They just kind of show up to help or do something. So I guess I'll kind of let people discover that for themselves as they read. It is kind of fun when they show up and gives you a little bit more insight into what they do and their characters. But actually, I'm trying to think. Has anyone showed up in Mask of Silver yet? I don't think so. I did just read a scene where they went to Velma's diner to eat, so I was expecting Agnes to show up, but she has not showed up yet.
She had the day off.
Yep. that was her day off. Yeah, so I recommend checking out those books. They don't come with cards, sadly. I know some people won't buy them because they don't come with cards, but if you're interested in the general Arkham Horror Files world, then they're worth a read.
If I buy the book and have it shipped to you, will you put like 2 copies of Knife in it and send it back to me?
Sure.
Yay! I still probably won't read it.
As long as it's alt art knife
Alt
from the
art.
core.
Yeah.
Alt arf harf harf.
That came in Barkham, the Alt-Arf cards. Nick, what's been grabbing you?
I got 2 things to talk about. So last episode, I talked about the Astral Tides role-playing game, working on the quick start guide, getting that to a point where it was released. Well, it's been released! So it's out. I would love if you went to drivethrurpg.com and picked it up. It is a pay-what-you-want digital download, so you decide the price. If you want to decide 0, that's fine. A lot of people have. If you want to decide more than 0, that's amazing. I would love that. But put a lot of effort into this thing, making it look pretty well. It comes with an adventure, 6 pre-generated characters, and all the basic rules that you need to get playing. And then, now it's just working on the core book after that. So, but that's on DriveThruRPG. You can just search for Astral Tides, or you can search for my name, Nicholas Corey, and it'll come up for either of those. But just today, I picked up a new game. Me and the fam went to Target because we had some stuff to pick up, and as usual, we walk the toy section. And Target has a much better game section.
Completely for the kids, of course.
Right, yeah. But Target has a much better game section than they did back when I got a discount there, when I worked there. But my wife works there, so we get her discount, so yay. And I was looking at the D&D starter set, and I was like, I don't really need the starter set. I have everything already, but I don't have the adventure that it comes with. But then I looked and I saw the Ravensburger Alien Fate of the Nostromo cooperative board game. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to get this. Like, I've played 2 of the movie Ravensburger games, the Jurassic Park Danger and the Jaws board game. And I've really enjoyed both of them. So I was like, I'll get it. I got it, and then I set it up, and I played, it's 1 to 5 player, so I was like, perfect, I don't have to, guilt trip my pregnant wife to sit at the table and play with me. I played 2 solo games in under an hour, and they were fun. I'm excited to play with more than 1 player, because it's one of those games where everybody's working together, there's no hidden traitor mechanic or anything like that. But there's no player elimination. Like, players don't get killed in this. You have morale, and that's based on the number of players that you're playing with. And getting attacked by the alien lowers your morale significantly, and stuff like that. So you get to pick as one of the crew members, and then there are random objectives that you have, and then after you complete all the objectives, there's a random final mission. So there's a lot of replayability in that randomly generated objective thing. So the first game I played was super easy, because both of my objectives required certain items be in my inventory, and then the final mission was like, have these items, and I was like, oh, I literally just won as soon as I flipped over the final mission. But then the second one I played was much more difficult, and it still was pretty fun. But there's also sliding difficulties, because you don't have to play with Ash the android walking around the map if you don't want to. But if you include him, it's like, okay, now the difficulty's way higher, because he limits your resources and he attacks you and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to get that one to the table with more than just me. I really like it, and now I think the only Aliens board game that is still on my radar is what's it called? Another Glorious Day in the Core, which is the minis skirmishing game that's based off of
the Helldivers edition.
Essentially. But that one I've heard that the base game is okay, but once you get the expansions is when it really comes into its own. And the base game is like $70. So I'm kind of waiting for a good sale to come up before I pick that one up. But no, Fate of the Nostromo, really fun. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Interesting.
I was wondering about that one, whether it was good or not.
Yeah. If you've played the Jaws game or the Jurassic Park game, and you like either of those, like it's the same, it's simple base design. It's not a game that's going to command a lot of time at the table, which is kind of a welcome addition for me, because I have so many games that run 2+ hours. And it's one that you can play a couple rounds of it, or a couple games of it in a row and still feel pretty good about it. But yeah, like Sean, you and I played that Jaws game the last time you were here, and that was really fun too.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, Target has a surprising amount of like solid movie tie-in games. Like I picked up a Fast and Furious one on a whim, and I'm not even a huge like fan of that series, but the game is super fun. It like gives me all my Mad Max enjoyment. So that's one.
Is that a Ravensburger game as well?
No, I think it's a different company. I think I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
But they're another company that does a lot of kind of movie tie-in games that you can find at Target. Yeah, it's super good though.
Excellent. Scott, what's grabbing you?
For me, okay, so the theme of the word inside. I watched the Bo Burnham series, or the special Inside. That was a lot different than what I was expecting from his first two specials.
I've heard so many different things from different people about that special.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. What's your take?
You know what? Like, it's hard to say. Like, immediately after, I was like, "Oh boy, that was heavy," and I'm like, "I'm not sure how I feel. I need to digest this for a couple hours." And like looking back now, I'm like, that is an amazing piece of like theater art. Like he plays that happy face, sad face theater thing like to a key. Like it is absolutely amazing. I encourage, even if you don't like his normal stuff, like it's not, there's some comedy in there, but it is not a comedy special. Don't go in expecting like pop a bowl of popcorn, like I'm gonna laugh for an hour. Yeah, no. Anyways, I don't even want to say anymore because it's just so fantastic to just go in as blind as you can to it, and it's all about kind of the last year and a half with isolation and like people's mental health and everything like that. It's fantastic. Also, Mother, this is like, I think because I haven't been on the show for so long, this is my identical time, but their album Inside came out like June 26th. Obviously my favorite band. This album, it started out rough for me because I'd listened to a couple of singles. I'm like, oh, they're good. Then I listened to the whole album once. I was like, it's all right. You know, I was like, oh man, is this going to be the first one that I'm not happy about? It is now my second favorite Mother album. Because once you listen to it from, like, if you have the time to listen to it from start to finish, like you're on a long drive, especially like in the middle of the night when you can concentrate on the music and not on the road, because, you know, there's nothing in the darkness anyways. It is just so well put together, and the story and how things go together, and like it just, oh my god, and the way it finishes off, and the song about being on a ventilator, it's just like the idea that is a song. I'll show it to you later, Nick, because you can just listen to that song like in, what do you call it, like just separate from the album. It's like, that's really creepy. Like it's I don't know, I think it's fantastic. Yeah, and then I
have listened to that album. I need to get over that hump of some of these are pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, like the way that finishes out too, that song just, it's called Inside, but it's like 8.5 minutes long, and it does this thing that I like with who does this? Mars Volta does this. There's a couple other bands where like there's a song and it's playing normally, and then it goes into like this chaotic sound, almost like a bunch of different instruments playing different things or whatever, and like it's almost like a weird smorgasbord of stuff, and then it slowly comes together, like, and you're just realizing like, oh, it's coming together, and then there's like, you know, all the instruments start now playing together, and then there's like the climax of the song, and it's big, and oh my god, it just, getting chills thinking about it. And then of course playing chess. So if you want to play chess, contact me, because I'm actually starting
to have
a
channel.
I know, yeah. There's not very many people in it. But feel free if you want to talk about chess. I'm actually studying it, and I've talked about this before, how like paramedic school knocked the idea of reading books for fun out of me. I've made it halfway through a book for fun that isn't like a chess study book, but it is about chess. It's a story about Magnus Carlsen in 2016 and stuff like that. But so yeah, halfway through. It's my fourth book for pleasure since 2012.
Well, look, dude, I
Slow
can say that
down, man.
I was an avid ass reader, like through high school,
Mm-hmm.
even into college. Like I read the Dark Tower series in college while
Yeah.
I was still doing all the college reading. I would attribute it as much to smartphones as to anything else. Like just that brain space is spoken for.
For me, it was the never wanting to see the printed word again. Honestly, like paramedic school killed. Like I had to read like 12,000 textbook pages in like a year and a half. Like it was paramedic school is the worst thing anyone could ever do. It is terrible. There's a 50% washout rate. Like it's,
Oof.
yeah, 80% to pass. Like a 79 is a fail. Like it's just friends don't let friends do paramedic school. So it just destroyed. I'm glad I did it, but it destroyed any love of reading for pleasure that ever existed. But now it's coming back. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, guys, I think we'll wrap it up about there. So thank you for joining us for episode 116 of Mythos Busters, and we will catch you guys next time.